everyone, welcome back. Today we are going to discuss about neonatal hyperbilirubinemia or neonatal jaundice. So what is this jaundice basically, or hyperbilirubinemia? As the name suggests, the bilirubin level goes high up, that is hyperbilirubinemia. So to understand the jaundice, we have to first understand how this bilirubin is formed and how it is metabolized in the body. So basically, hemoglobin and heme containing proteins are, when metabolized, they give rise to two components, that is, one is heme and another one is globin. So this heme is further metabolized into liver by the virtue of different enzymes into bilirubin, which is excreted then in the bile. So this bilirubin is in two forms, available in two forms in the body. That is, one is direct bilirubin, that is conjugated bilirubin, and indirect, that is unconjugated bilirubin. So this direct bilirubin is soluble in body fluids, and hence it can be excreted very easily. But in unconjugated bilirubin, it is not getting excreted as it is not soluble in the body fluids. So how this bilirubin is excreted, we'll learn in more detail. Bilirubin is transported with the means of albumin into the hepatocytes, that is the cell of the liver. Hepatocyte is a single cell of the liver. So via albumin it is transported inside the cell, and there in the hepatocytes it is conjugated by virtue of different enzymes into bilirubin and excreted in the bile, and minimal part of it is also excreted in the stools. So what are the issues with the neonate? Why this jaundice is very much common in the neonates? So basically, there is high amount of bilirubin production. As we know that the fetus needs more hemoglobin to derive the oxygen from the blood when the baby is in the womb. So they have a high level of hemoglobin ranging up from 18 to 22 anywhere. So obviously the bilirubin load becomes high in neonates. Then besides this, there is some amount of ineffective erythropoiesis, which also give rise to heme component. And there is defective uptake of bilirubin in the hepatocyte due to immaturity of the livers in all the neonates, and there is decreased hepatic excretion also due to decreased enterohepatic circulations. So do all hyperbilirubinemias are pathological? The answer is no. Each and every newborn gets this jaundice, that is when the bilirubin level is increased more than 1 mg per dl in the blood. So each and every newborn has higher levels of bilirubin in the blood, but the thing is that it is called as a physiological jaundice in few phases of neonates. So what is physiological jaundice? When it is not apparent within 24 hours of life, and when it is not up to a level where the phototherapy is indicated according to the bilirubin normogram. So what is pathological jaundice then? So obviously one point we know, the jaundice whenever it is appearing before 24 hours, completion of 24 hours of a life in a neonate, will be termed as a pathological jaundice. Besides this, elevation of the bilirubin, which is requiring phototherapy as per the normogram. What is normogram? We'll come to it later on in the lecture. That will be also termed as pathological hyperbilirubinemia. Then rise in bilirubin level more than 0.2 mg per deciliter every hour per hour. It will be also coined as pathological hyperbilirubinemia. And jaundice, which is persistent beyond 14 days of life, will be also counted under head of pathological hyperbilirubinemia. So some neonates will develop pathological jaundice and some will not. So who are the neonates who are at high risk of developing pathological jaundice? So what are the risk factors in short? So the risk factors are high pre-discharge TCB, that is transcutaneous bilirubin, or high pre-discharge bilirubin levels. Then gestational age 35 to 36 weeks. Previous sibling or a previous baby having history of jaundice requiring phototherapy, ABO or RH incompatibility, what is it? We'll come to it later in detail. And East Asian race. These are all the neonates who are at higher risk of developing pathological jaundice. So we will also come to know what is the relation with the feeding. There are two types of jaundice in relation with the feeding. Number one is breastfeeding jaundice and number two is breast milk jaundice. So we'll first look what is breastfeeding jaundice. Breastfeeding jaundice generally peaks on day 3 of life, and due to lactation failure, difficult latching, baby is not able to suck more on the mother, baby is not receiving good amount of liquids or feed. So that is the reason why they develop hyperbilirubinemia. And how is it different from breast milk jaundice? Breast milk jaundice generally peaks at around 2 weeks of age, and it is due to beta glucuronidase that deconjugates the intestinal bilirubin and promotes reabsorption of the bilirubin which is present in the breast milk. This breast milk jaundice decreases on stoppage of breastfeeding, and we can restart the breastfeeding after 48 hours. Generally, after restarting breastfeeding, the rise in the bilirubin is not very much significant. So only stoppage of the breastfeeding for 48 hours suffices the treatment, along with, of course, if other treatments are needed depending upon what is the level. So first we'll discuss how do we prevent this hyperbilirubinemia. The easiest way is to screen all the neonates. Hyperbilirubinemia per se may not be dangerous in all the neonates, but when it exceeds beyond certain level, it may cause cerebral toxicity. So we have to screen all the neonates before discharge, and we have to plot the neonate where the neonate is lying on the graph of bilirubin normogram, and depending upon that we have to categorize the risk strategy of the neonate and plan the follow-up earlier or the later. How we can do the bilirubin estimation is, one is serum bilirubin estimation that is done in the lab, and another is transcutaneous bilirubin measurement, that is a non-invasive method of doing bilirubin measurement. And end-tidal carbon monoxide measurement also can be done for pre-discharge criteria. Now here we'll discuss more in detail about blood group incompatibility. There are two types of blood group incompatibilities. One is ABO incompatibility and another is RH incompatibilities. So both those incompatibilities stake the neonate at a higher risk of developing hyperbilirubinemia. So what is it? So basically, first we'll discuss about ABO incompatibility. In it, mother's blood group is O positive and baby can be either A positive or B positive. So if the mother is O positive and baby is A positive, we call it as ABO incompatibility, or mother is O positive and baby is B positive, we call it as ABO incompatibility. So what happens when the mother's blood group is O positive, they have antibodies for anti-A and anti-B. So when transplacental passage of this anti-A and anti-B happens and the baby's blood group is actually A positive or B positive, they will start the destruction of the RBCs, and by virtue of it bilirubin will increase. Generally ABO incompatibilities are not very severe incompatibilities, but on the other hand, RH incompatibility. What is RH incompatibility? That is D antigen blood group. So if the mother is RH negative and the baby is RH positive, in a RH negative mother, baby will have anti-D antibodies. So these will travel through placenta and will reach to the baby's blood, and those antibodies will start the destruction in the early age of fetal life. These incompatibilities are generally severe and may lead to very high jaundice and fetal hydrops also. So basically, because of RH incompatibility, there are two main issues. One is hyperbilirubinemia leading to cerebral toxicity, and another is anemia. Because of anemia, baby will have ascites, edema, pleural effusion like symptoms. So that is called as hydrops in a fetus. So RH incompatibility is generally more severe, and as the parity increases, that is the number of pregnancies increases, the later the number of pregnancy, the infant is put at a higher risk for developing jaundice in RH incompatibility. Now we'll come to evaluation of a baby who has come to you with the jaundice. How do we evaluate a baby? First and foremost is, of course, family history. So family history of jaundice, anemia, family history of splenectomy, family history of any other sibling having jaundice needing phototherapy. Then pregnancy history, detailed pregnancy history is also important, just to rule out any viral infection. Has the mother had any viral infection like toxoplasmosis, which will predispose the infant to develop hyperbilirubinemia. Then history of HI, delayed cord clamping, these are also important. And in infant history, delayed or infrequent stooling, which will increase the intrahepatic circulation, and history of weight loss, vomiting, history suggestive of galactosemia are important types of history in infant history per se. Then we have to examine the baby actually. Is the baby appropriate for gestational age, large for gestational age, or small for gestational age? Then is there any microcephaly, just in case baby has had any congenital infection, intrauterine congenital infection, then baby may have microcephaly. Is there any evidence of cephalhematoma? Cephalhematoma is a loculated blood in the scalp. So that will also give a more load of hemoglobin degradation on the immature fetus liver. So that may also predispose to increased risk of jaundice. So we have to see, is the baby having any cephalhematoma? Is there any pallor? In case of blood group incompatibilities, baby may have pallor because of increased destruction of the red blood cells. Then is there any hepatosplenomegaly, which may again suggest for any intrauterine infections or other liver abnormalities. Evidence of omphalitis or evidence of sepsis. Is the baby feeding well, activity, cry, tone, all those things are good or not? And what is the weight of the baby? Is the baby has the baby had a lot of significant weight loss, which may point towards breastfeeding jaundice. Now we have examined the baby, we have to order some certain blood tests in the baby. So what are those blood tests when we suspect a jaundice in a baby? First and foremost is mother's blood group typing and baby's blood group typing, just to rule out any blood group incompatibilities. Then a peripheral smear to look for RBC morphology. Then hematocrit level, G6PD, retic count, and bilirubin level, serum bilirubin level. These are certain blood tests which have to be advised in all the neonates with pathological jaundice. So who are the neonates who are at higher risk of developing hyperbilirubinemic neurotoxicity? So what is hyperbilirubinemic neurotoxicity? This bilirubin has affinity towards deposition in the midbrain. So once the bilirubin level rises to certain extent and it crosses blood-brain barrier, then it gets deposited into the midbrain, and that will cause certain adverse effects in the babies, like baby will have convulsions, baby will have arching and persistent posturing, baby will have poor tone, activity, cry, and development will be hampered later on. So who are the neonates who are at high risk of developing hyperbilirubinemic neurotoxicity are immunohemolytic disease, G6PD deficiency, kids who are having history of birth asphyxia, sepsis, acidosis again predisposes to neurotoxicity, and serum albumin level less than 3 mg per dl, because albumin acts as a vehicle for bilirubin to get conjugated. So even the albumin level is less than 3 mg per dl, then baby will have higher chances of developing neurotoxicity. Then how do we manage those babies with hyperbilirubinemia? The most commonly available therapy is phototherapy, and it is the only therapy available for indirect hyperbilirubinemia. So phototherapy. How do phototherapy work in the neonates? It works at 3 levels. One is structural isomerization. Structural isomerization converting bilirubin into lamirubin, and which is then excreted into the bile. And then photoisomerization. Photoisomerization, it rapidly converts the bilirubin into its racemar, that is 15Z bilirubin into 15E bilirubin, which is excreted easily in the bile, and it is non-toxic. So the risk of neurotoxicity is also decreased. And photooxidation, this is a slow process of converting bilirubin into the polar products, and these are then excreted into the urine later on. So the phototherapy works at those 3 stages. So what are the different types of phototherapy devices which we get? These are of LED, then fluorescent type, halogen, and newer devices are fiber optic devices are also available. Basically they emit the blue green light of 460 to 490 nanometer wavelength, and the irradiance is of at least 30 nanometer per centimeter square per nanometer. So illumination of the maximum body surface area is what is indicated when we keep the baby in the phototherapy. So the diaper area should be minimum, and the skin should be exposed. Most of the skin should be exposed to the phototherapy. How do we administer? Actually, how do we administer the phototherapy? Baby is kept in a cradle with a warmer so that the temperature has been taken care of as we are keeping the baby open without any clothes. So as the skin comes in direct contact with the light. So the diaper area, as we explained, diaper area has to be kept minimum, and protective eye shield is to be used for certain proposed damage to retina by the phototherapy lights. So what are the adverse effects of the phototherapy? Is one is bronze baby syndrome. When we give phototherapy for prolonged period of time, number one, and when we give phototherapy to the patients who have direct hyperbilirubinemia. So in those patients, the skin will turn into black bronze complexion, that is called as a bronze baby syndrome. Once we stop the phototherapy, the complexion can come to normal within day or two. And other risk is risk of retinal damage. So we need to differentiate what is direct hyperbilirubinemia and what is indirect hyperbilirubinemia. This neonatal jaundice, unless specified otherwise, is indirect hyperbilirubinemia. When the direct component of the bilirubin rises more than 20% of the total component of bilirubin, then it is coined as a term direct hyperbilirubinemia. There are other causes of direct hyperbilirubinemia. Direct hyperbilirubinemia is generally seen in neonatal cholestasis. Cholestasis means the bilirubin is actually conjugated into a soluble form, but it is not getting excreted through the bile. So that syndromes are called as cholestasis, neonatal cholestasis syndrome. So in those cases, we will get direct hyperbilirubinemia, and the management for those cases is totally different. So when the baby is in the phototherapy, what additional supportive treatment we have to give is adequate hydration. We may consider IVIG in case of immune hemolysis like Rh incompatibility most commonly. Then exchange transfusion is the last resort when the bilirubin persists to rise more than 0.5 mg per dl in spite of phototherapy, and it is not coming down, and if the baby is showing any signs of neurotoxicity, that is, those are the patient in whom exchange transfusion is indicated. So what do we actually do in exchange transfusion? We have to secure a central line, and generally double volume exchange transfusion we do. We estimate the baby's blood volume as 80 into body weight. 80 ml per kg approximately is the blood volume of a baby. So we double those volume, and we order whole blood cell. This is the only area where whole blood cell is indicated, whole blood transfusion is indicated. So we push in the blood and pull out, push in, pull out, like those cycles are repeated so as till the time when the double volume is infused in the baby, double the volume of actual blood volume the baby is having is infused in the baby, and that much amount is taken out. So at the same time RBCs and FFP both are infused into the baby, and the toxins are removed. So this is a very invasive procedure. So it is indicated only when the baby is showing signs of neurotoxicity and the bilirubin level is not coming down even with the effective maximal phototherapy. So just a brief note on direct hyperbilirubinemia. that is neonatal cholestasis. So most commonly bile duct obstruction syndromes like biliary atresia, choledochal cyst are seen in the neonates. Infection also may lead to bile obstruction and neonatal cholestasis, and metabolic disorders like alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, cystic fibrosis, those will fibrose the bile ducts, and because of that the excretion will be hampered and there will be direct hyperbilirubinemia. Endocrine causes like hypothyroidism, hypopituitarism may also give rise to direct hyperbilirubinemia. Once we diagnose that there is direct hyperbilirubinemia, then we have to investigate the baby in another line, that sonography of the abdomen is done. LFTs, we have to see whether the LFTs are deranged or not, liver function test. Then HIDA scan is to be done, and liver biopsy in some cases is indicated. So this is all about the neonatal hyperbilirubinemia. Thank you.